Hello, and welcome back to the Why Am I Talking podcast. I know this episode is a bit late. I said I was going to post it like 3 days ago, I think, and then I just got busy and it didn't end up happening. So I am your host, Jonah. As you know, if you have listened to any of the other podcasts, if you don't, well, now we're friends. I'm Jonah. Nice to meet you. What's your name? Oh, interesting. I couldn't hear it because I'm recording this before the video ever goes up, and even if you said it out loud, there's no way I would have heard you because we are on the internet and we aren't actually speaking directly to each other. But nice to meet you anyway. I'm going to be talking about Amores Perros today, which is Alejandro. How do you say his name? Yeah, I'm right. Alejandro G. Innaritu's Mexican film from 2000. If you don't know who Alejandro Innaritu is, he is the director behind The Revenant, which got Leonardo DiCaprio his first Oscar, and also won Best Cinematography. And he wrote and directed Birdman, which had Michael Keaton, Edward Norton, Emma Stone, and it won Best Picture. I think 2014 is when it won, and it's a comedy, drama, kind of a weird movie, pretty funky. It's a fantastic film. I would suggest that anybody go check it out. I guess the way to describe Birdman is it's like because it's meant to be as if there's no cuts, and so it's like you're watching one long take, and so you're very engrossed in that movie. But that's not the point. I'm going to talk about Amores Perros today, not his other movies, because I've already seen the other ones, and I've already talked about them with friends, and this is... nobody else has seen Amores Perros, so this is a good time for me to talk about it. I guess. That's what the point of the podcast is. So, Amores Perros is very unique in the way it tells its story because it follows three different storylines that end up intersecting, and they all sort of come together in one way or another. And it is a very, very dark movie. And maybe I'm biased because I love dogs, and there's a lot of dead dogs in this movie. Oh, by the way, Amores Perros, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure it just translates to love dogs in Spanish. But that I think I'm wrong because on the title screen it says "love's a bitch" or "life's a bitch," something like that. For underneath the title card in English subtitles, it said, I think, "love's a bitch," which would make sense because the movie is depressing as fuck. Essentially, we start and we're watching like a car chase. It's the first 30 seconds in the movie. You're watching like a car chase, and there's a dog in the back seat that looks pretty dead. And there's this guy driving, and he's asking, "Is the dog dead? Is the dog dead?" And then there's this like yellow Jeep truck thing following them, and these guys have guns in the car behind them. So it's like a typical like action sequence. And then he runs a red light and he runs directly into another car, and we briefly see a woman like covered in blood pounding on the door trying to get out after the crash ends. And then it cuts to the beginning of the movie and we see the guys that were driving the car in a completely different scenario. And I'm going to kind of tell the plot before we get started. So if you plan on watching, maybe skip ahead. If you plan on watching the movie, maybe skip ahead to a certain point where I'm not talking about the plot. But if you don't care, then sit down, buckle in, because you have a wild ride ahead of you. This is a very complex story, and it's pretty sad. So we start with a dude who has the funkiest haircut I've ever seen. He's got like, it's like he has like a buzz cut, except for like in the front of his head, and then kind of going to the back. He has like a if a mohawk was like done wrong, like the person cutting your hair didn't know what a mohawk was, and they just kind of like shaved all of your head, but like the hair that's right above your forehead. It looks really dumb. That's the point I'm trying to make. Not really important, but goddamn, I laughed every time I saw that dude. And he's like at a dog fighting ring, and he watches this one guy. I can't remember his name. His dog just fucks up another dog, and then they're like driving along, and they end up. The guy's like, the dog's still amped up. And then he tries to sick him on this homeless guy's dogs. But the homeless guy pulls out a fucking machete, which we will find out that a homeless dude is not as he seems. But who has a machete just like on them at all times? I don't know. And then, so he turns around and he sees one of our protagonist's dog just strolling along. And he sicks him after, and we don't get to see what happens. But then it cuts back, and all of a sudden we're with our protagonist. His name is escaping me for some reason. I didn't write down notes for this movie because I watched it very late at night, so I just absorbed it, and so names are gonna be harder for me to remember. I'm gonna call this guy. I'm gonna call him. Fuck. Danny. Why not? Danny is his name. Why? You know what? That's probably not right, but I'm going to call him Danny. So Danny shows up, and he's talking to this girl who we don't really know how they are related or how they know each other, but they obviously live in the same house. And then the boyfriend it's the husband of this girl shows up, and they kind of argue for a little bit, and then the guy leaves. And his dog is there, like his dog that the Danny's dog is there, who we just saw the other dog attack, but we didn't see the outcome. And so his dog's fine, and his friend is like, "Holy shit, dude, your dog just killed the other guy's dog." And he's like, "What? No way!" And then the other guy shows up and is like, "You're gonna have to pay me 20 grand. That's what that other dog cost." And he's like, "What? No." And then that's kind of like the beginning of his storyline, I guess. But I'm gonna really simplify his storyline because I don't feel like going into mass detail here. Essentially, he is in love with his brother's wife, who is the girl he was talking to at the beginning of the movie. And so he's trying to convince her to run away with him because her husband and his brother, Danny's brother, is abusive, and he robs stores for a living. That's like literally how he gets his money, and he like works like part-time at a grocery store too. And they're supporting a baby, and we find out she's pregnant, and Danny's like, "Just run away with me, like we'll do it." And she's like, "No, we don't have any money." And so then he thinks about it, and he's like, how can I make a bunch of money really fast? And then he looks at his dog who just fucked up another dog. And he's like, sure, why not? And so he starts using his dog to get money by putting it in fights. And he makes a bunch of money. And eventually the girl, the wife of his brother, concedes and is like, "I'll run away with you." And then they have a ton of sex. And meanwhile, her husband's cheating on her anyway. So it's not like, I don't know, she's not like in the wrong, I suppose. I mean, no one's really in the right. But then he robs another store, and then finally, Danny, our buddy Danny, he sets a bunch of dudes to go beat the shit out of his brother because he's like, we don't want him bothering us. And then the day that they're finally set to leave, Danny and the wife, she's just gone. And so is his brother. Like, they just disappeared. And so he suspects that she used him, and we don't really ever find out for sure if she used him or if the brother made her go away with him because he figured it out. We don't really. My guess is that she used him to get money, and then dipped. I mean, there's another scene towards the end of the movie that maybe gives us a hint, but essentially they're gone, and then he's like, "I'm gonna do one last fight with this dog." He shows up, and the dude just shoots his dog like in the middle of the fight. And he's like fucking pissed, and so they pick up the dog, and him and stupid haircut guy pick up the dog and put him in the car, and then he starts walking back, And then he just, like, stabs the guy who shot his dog and then starts running away. And then he gets in the car, and the car chase commences that we saw at the beginning of the movie. And then he hits the lady. And, but before any of that happens, we see a little clip on TV of this lady who was in the car, and she's being interviewed on TV. So she's like a famous model. And then it cuts back before she gets in the car crash, and she's getting off this TV set, and this guy invites her over to his apartment. She gets there, and the guy's like, "You're gonna live here now," and she's like, "Fucking what? I don't even like you." And then, surprise, this other guy comes around the corner, and she's like, "Oh my god, yay!" And so we find out, because this guy's shown up like intermittently, just in random scenes. I never knew who he was until we cut back to this storyline. But he is married and has 2 daughters, but he's getting a divorce from his wife, and he hates his kids. So he's having an affair with this model, and he is talking to her, and he's like, "It happened. I'm separated from my wife. Woohoo!" And so they're living together in this apartment, except for there's a hole in their floor for some reason. I don't like, I guess structurally their apartment just fucking sucked. And so there's this hole, like, she's like running towards him to give him a hug, and she just like falls in this hole for a second. I was like, what the hell? But essentially, she then is like, "Alright, I'll see ya," and then she gets in her car and she starts driving, and then she gets hit. And she barely survives, and she's in a wheelchair, she has a neck brace on, but like, she's gonna eventually recover, but she has pretty gruesome scars. And so she's wheeling around the house while the other dude is while her boyfriend is at work, and her dog just like falls in the hole in the floor and like disappears. Just literally just falls in the hole and gets stuck, I guess. This part kind of didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because the floor was like hollow. Like, there's nothing down there. So how did the dog get stuck? I don't really know. And anyway, it's stuck there. Also, it's stuck there for like 2 goddamn weeks. And like, we find out there's rats down there and stuff. But basically, this dog being under there, and this girl being in the wheelchair, and she cares a lot about her dog, but she's also stuck in the wheelchair, and she's losing her career because her legs were like, I guess, the sexiest thing about her, but they no longer are because they're gross and all scarred and stuff. And so she is getting really bitter and like starts screaming at this dude, and they get in these huge arguments, and "I fucking hate you," blah blah blah, you know. It's like they've been married for 50 years, except for they hate each other. And they get in this huge fight one day because he's unwilling to tear up the floorboards to find the dog, and she locks herself in a room, and eventually he breaks down the door to get inside, and she's just like, I thought she was dead, but she apparently gangrene like seeped into her leg, and so next thing we know, we're at the hospital, and they had to amputate her leg, which is holy shit. And so then the last time we see her is her boyfriend dude is wheeling her back into the apartment, and they just kind of look out the window, and that's like the last time we see her. So that was maybe to me the most depressing storyline, just because I was like, holy shit, these people like they seemed so happy at the beginning, and then by the end they're just miserable, and this girl has 1 leg. It seemed like the other 2 storylines, which I'm going to get to the third one here in a second, the other 2 storylines, it seemed like they were already kind of sad, like at the beginning, and so they ended sad, they started sad, and they ended sad, and you know, whatever. But the third storyline, which this one has been intercut with the other 2, like we'll randomly see scenes, is the homeless guy who had a machete at the beginning. Towards the beginning of the movie, he's like walking up and down the street, and he's like looking in this restaurant, and then he just pulls out a pistol and shoots one of the dudes in the restaurant, like through the glass, and then he takes off running. And so I had no idea what that was about. And he has all these dogs, and he keeps looking over at this. He goes to like this funeral, and he keeps looking at this girl, but we don't really know how he knows her. And we find out later that she's his daughter that he abandoned like 30 years ago or something. And I guess he's trying to reconnect with her, but he doesn't know how to because she literally thinks he's dead. Like her mother told her that he was dead this whole time. And so he essentially is a hitman. That's his job now, I guess. I guess when he left, what I got out of the story, because I guess they kind of glossed over what his past was, but essentially he left his wife and daughter to become a guerrilla fighter, not like gorilla like Donkey Kong, but like Guerrilla. Wait, how am I spelling that right? Guerrilla. Yeah, I'm right. That's how you spell it. And I guess he got arrested, and then he got into all this other shit. And basically, he's a badass. And so he gets hired to take a hit out on this guy's business partner, and he puts it off because he's focusing on his daughter. And then finally, he like kidnaps the dude. And then he like handcuffs him to like a pipe in his basement. Except for he doesn't kill him because, I mean, I don't actually really know why he doesn't kill him. I think he's fed up with the whole hitman business, and he doesn't even really understand why this guy needs to be killed, and so he's just kind of like, whatever, fuck it, I'm just gonna leave him chained up here. And so finally, when the guy comes to pay him, who took out the hit, he's like, come in here. And then the guy's just like alive, chained, and he's like, what the hell? And then he points a gun at the guy who's gonna pay him, and he's like, well, if you want him dead so bad, shoot him yourself. And then the guy can't bring himself to do it, and so I think he knocks out the guy who was gonna pay him, and we find out that they were actually like brothers. And that's pretty pointless, I guess. I guess it just adds a little more drama to that. The guy was trying to kill his brother, and just hit the microphone. Then he puts the pistol down in between the two of the dudes, and he's like, "All right, good luck." And then he walks out, and we don't see who lives or dies in that scenario. That's just it. And then he shaves. He gives himself a haircut. He puts on a suit. He goes to his daughter's apartment because he's like been stalking her, and he knows where she lives. And he records this really heartfelt message for her into her recording machine, and he leaves a bunch of stuff for her, and basically apologizes and says he loves her, and that if she's ever ready to talk to him, that there's a way to reach him. Like he like leaves his phone number or something. And then the last shot. Oh wait! I forgot to mention also. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go back to that. But he walks off into the desert with a dog. But that dog is the dog who got shot earlier in the movie. That was in the back. It was Danny's dog that got shot and was in the back of the car when they got in the car crash. And the homeless dude just happened to be walking by when the car crash happened, and so he helped. He helped them get the people out of the car, and then he grabbed the dog personally and then rekindled it to health, and then it ended up killing all of his dogs that he'd been taking care of for the whole movie. So that's really fucked up because he saves this dog and then it kills like the rest of his dogs, which is just so messed up. And also, not to mention, he like robs the dude that's gotten the car crash, Danny. He robs Danny. Like, he's like pretending to help him, and then he like takes all the money out of his pocket. And I was like, what the fuck, man? This dude just got in a car crash. But whatever. You know, everyone's kind of morally gray in this movie. And finally, we return to Danny, who is his brother gets shot when he's robbing a bank. And they're at the funeral, and Danny has a shaved head because I'm pretty sure most of his hair got burned off in the fire at the car crash. And then he's talking to the wife who was supposed to run away with him but didn't. And she's like, can we talk about this some other time? And he's like, I'm going to be at the train station at 12 tomorrow. I'll be waiting for you. And then she doesn't show up. And that's the last time we see Danny. And so to recap, last time we see Danny, he leaves the train station because the wife doesn't show up, who he's in love with. And the last time we see homeless dude is when he's walking off into the desert with Danny's former dog. And the last time we see model lady is when she has one leg and is staring out the window. So they all have pretty goddamn depressing endings, I'd say. I mean, the homeless guy has a pretty hopeful ending. Like, he's finally reconnected with his daughter and he's not killing people for money anymore. So, I mean, I see this as an absolute win for him. The other two just got fucked, okay? And it's a pretty solemn ending, I'd say. Also, stupid hair guy with the reverse mohawk or whatever. I guess it's not a reverse mohawk. I guess the dumb mohawk. It's not... Okay, mohawk isn't the word, but I'm going to call it a mohawk because it's just so dumb. He dies in the car crash, which is just so sad. So sad that his haircut ended there and will never return to us. Rest in peace. F in the chats. So, Amores Perros is a very unique movie. I've seen narratives that are similar in that there's individual storylines that kind of intertwine. I'm trying to think of an example, but it's kind of escaping my knowledge right now. I know for sure I've seen other movies like that. I just can't think of them right now. And do not watch it if you have a sensitivity to dead dogs, because there are so many dead dogs in the movie, like I said earlier. And I guess if I was gonna recommend this movie to people, I would say go in with the expectation that that the characters are not gonna get what they want, because it doesn't seem like anybody actually ends up with what they were hoping for in the end. So, apart from the plot, I'd say the cinematography was pretty enjoyable. I had some Innaritu-esque moments where there would be a long tracking shot, but that wasn't as relevant in this as it is in his two American films. Mostly, he focused on the narrative in this rather than the artistic elements that he could incorporate into the movie. He does have a very nice soundtrack. There's some Mexican hip-hop songs that he plays, and just a generally nice score. I can't think of how to describe it, which is why I should have taken notes, but I didn't. So you'll just have to watch it yourself if you really care that much about the score. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? I guess all the actors were fantastic. I did not know any of them, and I still don't know their names because I didn't really go on the IMDb page yet. But they all did a fantastic job. They all played their character well enough that I felt like I was getting a complete story out of only what is a third of a movie per each storyline, because they did such a good job emotionally conveying what was going on with their character in key scenes. Which sometimes it takes, a whole movie for someone to go through that emotional arc, but these actors were able to make it happen, in a third of the time, which is pretty impressive to me. Especially when there's such deep emotions that you're feeling, because it's some heavy shit that happens in this movie. So, this is easily my least favorite of Innaritu's movies, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just my least favorite. I mean, it's a fantastic... Again, it's for cinematic-wise, and for a well-told narrative, very, very well done. I just personally was... When I finished, I was just, depressed. And I don't like it when a movie leaves me that way. I know some people are fine with that, and they enjoy the artistry of that, but I don't. I don't like being depressed at the end of movies. I probably won't ever watch it again. It is all in Spanish. It is a Mexican movie, because Innaritu is a Mexican director. It's a touch long. It's like 2.5 hours, a little over 2.5 hours, and I didn't feel like it dragged at any point. Like, I was pretty, from scene to scene, I was pretty pulled in. But it did feel long when I was done. Like, it felt like I had just watched like a 3-hour long movie. But that's Amores Perros. I would have had more to talk about. I just, again, for the last time, I'm going to say it. I forgot to take notes. Or I guess I didn't forget to take notes. I just straight up didn't take notes because it was really late at night. And usually I have notes written down about specific scenes and specific, moments. I had a hard time remembering before the podcast started, which is part of the reason it took me so long, because I was wondering if I should even do it, because I couldn't remember a lot of scenes, and I like to talk about particular moments in movies when I'm doing these. I did it anyway, because I figured the plot itself was interesting enough, and this isn't like a very well-known movie, so I wanted to kind of raise awareness for it. Even if you did sit here and listen to the plot, I would still recommend going to watch it if you're a real film nut, because it is one of the better Spanish-speaking foreign language movies I've seen, and that I've heard of. And so, yeah, I guess just check it out. If you enjoyed this podcast, go check out the movie. Innaritu is one of my favorite directors, so I was pretty excited to watch this. And now I'm going to watch Citizen Kane next, which I know, if you're listening and you think I have any knowledge of film, you probably think I don't now because I haven't seen Citizen Kane. But it's not my fault, okay? I've taken multiple film classes, and I know pretty much everything about Citizen Kane, and I know all about its impact and everything. I just never seen the movie. Like, I might as well have seen it for all the clips I've watched and all the things I've read on it, but I've never actually sat down and just watched the whole movie. So I think I'm finally going to do that, just so I can really get a feel for all the influence it had, which would mean that probably in the next podcast, it's not going to be all about because I usually talk about plot in this and different cinematic techniques, but those have been talked about so much with Citizen Kane that I would probably talk about it in historical context for like the first half, to sort of give my thoughts on what movies I've seen surrounding it, and before and after, the differences I've noticed, because I've read multiple times that there's just cinema before Citizen Kane, cinema after Citizen Kane, and I know quite a bit about the effect it had on film, but actually seeing it will probably give me a better feel, and then I could talk about what it did, and then I will go briefly over plot and different moments I found interesting, because I'm seemingly incapable of talking about a movie unless I do that. Regardless, I think I'm going to do Citizen Kane next. I'm not sure. There's a couple other movies on my list right now that I'm debating, and I guess we'll just see in the next couple of days, because I'm not sure when I'll have the next episode up and what movie it will be of. Anyway, thank you for listening, if you made it this far. Again, I say that at the end of every podcast, because I don't know if anybody's making it this far. Thank you for anybody who did. Like, you're the best. And I appreciate every second that you are listening to this podcast. So I will see you in the next couple of days, I guess. Thank you again for like the fourth time. I don't know how to end this, so I just keep saying thank you. And it probably sounds really awkward for anyone who's like seriously listening, but I don't know if there's anybody like that. So thank you for the 5th time, bitch.